Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ryan Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Alright, did anyone see that Disneyland used fire and rescue to do a full evac off of their monorail train? Pretty cool, right? Let's see. Let's talk about this. How do I want to do this? Well, I'm wearing red today, so maybe let's do this Iron Man style. Jarvis.
Yes, Ryan?
Give me an aerial shot of the Disneyland resort.
One moment, Ryan.
Not bad. All right. Highlight the monorail track. Let's see. Get this out of here. Jarvis, make it big.
That's what she said.
Really?
Never mind. Enlarging frame.
Analysis for monorail failure.
Seems to be a lack of air gates in the system.
Why do you sound different?
Probably because you're not Iron Man.
Okay. Let's talk about it.
Now get ready. Here we go.
Alright, welcome to the channel. We're going to talk about Disneyland Resort. Yesterday evening, they had a monorail get stuck out there by the main gate. Now, where it got stuck is actually, if you're familiar with the park at all, it's actually a little bit further west of the main gate. It's actually right outside of the Indiana Jones show building. So that's where it stopped. And one of the reasons why I want to do this, because it's like, okay, they had to evacuate a monorail. What's the big deal? Well, you don't normally see them evacuated in place like this. Normally they're taken to a different area and evacuated somewhere else. So it was one of those things I wanted to look into and say like, well, wait a minute, why did this not happen? I have questions. So I started looking into it. And basically, yesterday, it suffered a shutdown of some sort, of which the park has not fully disclosed what happened. Okay, fine. That's honestly none of our business. That's perfectly fine. But we've got some footage, so let's take a look at some of that. So here's the first video that I came across.
Breaking news at Disneyland. Chris Christie is live in Air 7 with details. Chris.
That's right, you're taking a look at one of two monorails that have come to a safe stop here along the beam at the Disneyland Resort, right across from the downtown Disney area. You can see about 90 passengers on board these two trains. This is one of the trains now being evacuated by the fire department. The second train, incidentally, has been towed.
What you're actually looking at here is the side of the monorail is right here, and they have a fire and rescue truck off to the side, and they're actually evacuating people out of the side. It's been pointed out, it's like, yes, there is rooftop evacuation for those as well, but what they did was they simply just opened the train up, and they took people off that way.
By a diesel tractor over to the closest station. Everybody appears to be just fine. They are executing their contingency plan.
Yeah, basically their contingency plan is in case all else fails, we call the fire department to get people off of the ride, or off of the attraction, train, monorail, whatever you want to call it. So let's see. This one was from Facebook, DZ Hartley. Let's take a look at this. It was actually inside the monorail while they were waiting.
They open the doors one at a time with the ladder lined up as best they can. There'll be a fire department friend who will essentially be at your back as you are facing towards the ladder and backing down the ladder.
Yep.
Okay.
With essentially your posterior in their face as you go backing down the ladder, facing towards the ladder.
So basically, they came over the PA system and said, hey, you're going to be getting off. They're going to open up the doors. You know, it's basically turn around and back out of the door, and you have to go back down the ladder. The ladder's angle there is actually really flat, which is not ideal because when you're on a ladder, you typically either want to be, more at a higher, steeper angle. It doesn't sound right, but they're actually harder to get up and down when they're closer towards a flat plane. Really not meant to be walked on like that, but fire and rescue does what they need to do. Let's see. This is from News 5.
Tonight at the happiest place on earth as dozens of people got stuck on the park's monorail and had to be brought down on ladders by firefighters. The passengers were stuck on the monorail for hours after officials say two of the trains lost power.
Mary Beth McDade is live in Anaheim with the latest on the rescue and what went wrong. Mary Beth.
Hello there, Mike and Joe. That's right. It is called the happiest place on earth. But no doubt the 60 or so people that found themselves stranded on a stalled monorail train because the mechanical issues weren't feeling so happy.
Here's video of some Disneyland Park visitors being evacuated from a monorail train at the theme park Thursday evening. A woman from Washington State says that she was in one of the stranded cars for several hours after her car broke down around 3:30 this afternoon. And she tells us she wasn't alone.
A view from the Midway. There we go, the tram drop-off area. You can see in the background here, this is the Indiana Jones show building back here. So this gives you an idea of where the tram is. It's sitting right in front of the Indiana Jones show building. Okay, so typically when a monorail gets stuck, they have ways to get it off the track. But a lot of times what happens is that the monorails are typically left in an area where people can get on and off of them, i.e. they're in their load-unload stations. Disneyland has two of them, one in Tomorrowland, one in downtown Disney. So that's typically where their people get off of them at. So they're not used to pulling full trains of people. I'm assuming it can be done, guarding that there's some policy or procedure that doesn't allow it. But they do have a piece of equipment for that. Here's this tug that they use. As you can see, they're pulling it out. And it is a diesel-driven tug that connects right to the front of the monorail and can pull it out down the track. Now, this particular monorail is unloaded. There's no one in it. But it's available to go get monorails that have broken down out on the track somewhere, which is, they're a machine. They will break down eventually, and they have a special machine to go get it. So then the big question becomes, where was that at Disneyland? Well, if we look at Disneyland, all right, so we are looking at Disneyland right here. So here is Disneyland itself, and here is California Adventure down here. Now we are concerned with the monorail track. The monorail track is only about 2.5 feet wide, so it doesn't really stand out in the pictures. But if we look in, here is one of the stations right here in the downtown Disney area. When it dispatches, it goes out and heads north around this way and comes along these show buildings. Like, for example, here's Pirates of the Caribbean show building right there. It comes down back around here, and right here is Indiana Jones. That's where the Indiana Jones ride is. Now, right here in this area, this is where that particular monorail stalled. So the way these work is that there's typically one monorail that's in this station. At the same time, the other one is on its way or at the other station over here in Tomorrowland. Here's the other station right here. The monorail has to go around. It comes by the main plaza, comes around here, goes into this nice curly Q, almost like a figure 8, comes back by the Matterhorn into the Tomorrowland station. So they said both trains stalled because of the track broke, essentially. And I would say that it's like the power shut down to the track. So they had to get them. They had to recover it from somewhere. Now, generally on these things, this entire thing is looked at as a ride. Both stations have an e-stop, which means that they are taking power from local power distribution and running it up to the rails. And the rails are energized with the bus voltage that the monorails need to drive forward. The bus is constantly energized, and the conductor in the monorail is the one that allows it to go forward and backwards. So the two monorails theoretically could crash into each other if the conductor is not paying attention, just like a train on a track could also do the same exact thing if the conductor is not paying attention. They have a little bit more advanced warning and stuff in those. I'm not sure if it's equipped with it has a safety system on it, red lights, green lights, but again, it's to the conductor. I'm not sure if they have dead spots on the track, making a block system for this attraction. But basically, when you hit the e-stop, it basically drops the power out all over the place. The monorails, I had to check into it. It says that there's 600 volt DC running up to there. So there's two rails, a positive and negative, and I believe there's an earthing on one side as well. But that gets the DC bus voltage up to the monorail to run. So basically like an e-stop, all the power dropped out. So both monorails were essentially shut down. And then they couldn't get it restarted. So what's that mean? Well, e-stops are typically something you can recover from, just reset them, turn them back on, no big deal. Well, in this case, they lost power that they couldn't reset. So that tells me it wasn't local, like if you broke a line somewhere, you would lose a particular section of track. But the fact that both of them went down means they lost all the power. So I'm going to assume this was a voltage distribution panel that went down, possibly blew up or something like that. When panels arc flash, it's a catastrophic failure, and then you lose all the power afterwards. So what does that exactly mean for this recovery process? Well, they would have tried to go there and possibly troubleshoot and or make a repair for about the first 45 minutes to an hour. And then once that point came, they said, okay, well, this isn't working. We need to get those vehicles moving. So at that point, they would have started the secondary recovery, which is moving the tug. Well, the tug is living in their maintenance building, and in the park right here, if you go back over here past the Tomorrowland area right next to the freeway, we'll zoom in on it. This is their monorail service building back over here. And it goes through there's 3 service bays and a 4th like rehab bay right here. And the tug essentially sits right in this bay right here. In fact, I bet if I dropped a pin right here, let's see if I could do this. Street view. Hey, look at that. All right, cool. Hey, look at that. Well, looky there. There's the tug right there. So that tug is sitting there, it's waiting to go. It's like, okay, the next time somebody needs to be serviced out there. All right, so what do they need in here? Well, if you look at it, there is a track switch right here that goes between the 3 rails. So that track switch has to be able to be moved to that center rail in that particular case to get that tug. Down here, there's another track switch right here that's also got to be moved to get that tug onto the line. And then down here, this is behind, it's a small world, like goes right here by the train station. Here's the Autopia area right here. And in the back right there, there is another track switch right there that has to be shifted over. Why am I pointing out track switches? If the entire compound for the monorail lost power, if everything lost power, in this case, I'm going to say like a main distribution panel blew up, which high voltage equipment could have. It won't really make like a large boom or anything like that. It could just essentially go and the whole thing just fries and all the copper bussing and everything gone. But if that is the case, then now mechanics have to come out here and manually open up brakes and pins and locking devices to manually crank that stuff over and push that back into position. And then once all those are in position, where you have out here, let's see, where you have this one, and that one in position, then you can drive that diesel tug out of there. So they have 2 options at that point. Once the tug gets on the track and they move it back over, they have to first go to the monorail that's going to be in the Tomorrowland station, and they have to move it depending on where it was. Now, this whole time I haven't seen video of the second monorail being evacuated. It wasn't stuck on the track somewhere, which tells me it was in the station. So it was either in the Tomorrowland station or back over here, it was in the downtown station. But given the proximity from the downtown station to where this left, honestly, once that monorail starts driving, that's probably about a minute into the journey. Not even that. It's very close to the start of the station. So I'm willing to bet that the other one was still in the Tomorrowland station because there's a lot of track between those 2 places. So then they were faced with this really weird scenario. It's like, okay, well, the other one is right here. So what do? You could take that guy and you can drive it all the way from the service station and come out here and go along the back side, which is the exit route. And it comes all the way down, it comes down here through California Adventure, past Soarin', all that stuff, back over, and then comes through that station and will connect with the backside of that monorail, and then you could push it the rest of the way forward. But I saw a picture. It was dark. It was hard to make out. But I actually saw a picture taken from this vantage point where the tug was hooked up, basically, and I saw this tent in the background. So the tug was hooked up right in front of it. Now, this was later on at night. You gotta remember, it sat there for a couple of 3 hours before they were able to evacuate it. But I think they got that tug and hooked it back up to the front. Now, the fact that the tug was in the front means that they actually brought the tug on, closed the track switch, then they ran around, grabbed the monorail that was in the Tomorrowland station, pulled it off, out back this way, opened the track switch back up, put it away, brought the tug back out, closed the track switch again, and then they came all the way back around through the Tomorrowland station, back around all this spaghetti bowl, and then back out the front and met it at the very front over here. That was an interesting route to go, but they probably only have one of those tugs to do that. So by the time the troubleshooting took place and they figured out they couldn't do it and they were going to have to evacuate, and then they were going to have to get the other monorail off before they can go out and grab that one from the front side, they had already called fire and rescue. Now, what happens when you call fire and rescue? Well, once fire and rescue comes out, the park takes a back seat. The park is just there to assist fire and rescue. If the park can do something and get the attraction going to where fire and rescue doesn't have to do anything, they will. Fire and rescue calls the shots, though. The park is, again, taking a back seat to this. So if fire and rescue showed up and said, hey, can you guys work on this more? We'll wait. Disney would have gladly done that. But I think at this point, they were to the point where it's like, okay, it's still going to be a while longer. We should probably just take the people off where they sit right there. And fire and rescue agreed and said, yep, that's a good time. Let's just go ahead and do it. 60 people on board from what the news reporter said. It's like, okay, yeah, not great, but it sounds like that was going to do it. So I'm thinking what happened for the root cause of this. Again, I don't have any inside knowledge. But I'm just taking the events of where they stalled and what they had to do to get them going again, and thinking about how the system is laid out. It's not like a slot car track where you just hook the power up at one side and let it go, because both the monorails draw voltage from different points along the way. There's tons of what are called home run wiring. The home run wires basically will go from a connector, let's say over here at this monorail station, and they will go in a conduit and run all the way back to a power substation somewhere. Now, it could be that they have a substation feeding different sections of the ride, but then what you have to do from a safety point of view is you have to mechanically or electrically tie all those together so that when an e-stop is hit, it drops out everything along the way. It's a engineering safety nightmare. Most people don't want to do that, so they would rather spend the money and just run all those wires all the way back across the other side of the park. They do it all the time. They'll stop in vaults all the way along, and they'll just terminate with new wires, and they'll keep moving them out until it gets back to its main power distribution area and its main communication area. And then when they hit the e-stop, just one thing drops out, and it drops out everything to that entire loop. I think whatever that is that has dropped out basically went bye-bye. Not in an easy way either, like probably in an up in smoke way. And then they weren't able to recover it from there. And you had people stuck for a long time. Not great, but that's what happens. Yeah, fire and rescue shows up. You work with fire and rescue, get the people off the attraction. It's no big deal. Nobody was hurt. They did a good job. I mean, it kind of sucks being Disneyland because you have everybody with cameras trained on it. So I'm actually surprised it didn't make more of a splash in the news than it did. But then again, I'm hearing about it here in the Midwest, and that's 1,500 miles away, I think it is. So, yeah. All right. I think that's it for this video. Let me know if you got anything else to add to it. If anybody else knows out there, does the monorail run a true block safety system where there's an electronic interrupt between sections of track or is it just the conductors? I know the system was built back in the 50s, so wouldn't be surprised if like the train stations there is just the conductors doing it like it's always been. There's nothing really wrong with that. If someone knows, let me know. All right, I'm Ryan the Ride Mechanic. Stay off the air gates. Bye.